Good?
Yeah, sorry, I think I got rubbed by Restream.
Yeah, that's all good. So, Jim, the abstract cycle is in full effect, and who better to kick it off with this dialogue than the GOAT himself, Michael Lee, aka Cash Bowie, co-inventor of abstract. The markets are popping, abstract is booming, sentiment around this space is through the roof at the moment. Cash, talk to me. How are you doing?
Uh, oh, what's good, man? Things are good. Just been on the road for forever. Was in New York, Chicago, LA, Europe and Asia not too long ago. I I think it's just kind of what you're saying. We're just onboarding a lot of super, as well as I think you're starting to see a lot of the global brands starting to leverage abstract as a publishing platform, as a way to bring it into their existing stack to hopefully figure out how to turn on new sources of revenue, save money, or just better engage fans, customers, partners. So all that is really dope to see. I think this is the stuff that Luca, Lorenzo, Saigar, like the entire core team, we kind of envisioned this like a year and a half ago. So it's super dope to kind of see this all really kind of playing out. But more to come.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, you guys tried something new, something different, something that hasn't been done before in crypto. You took a massive risk in a completely new direction, but with insane risk comes even more
Can't hear you,
insane
but
reward. You can't hear me? Check,
time to
check,
time.
check.
But no, it's I think the rule at abstract has always been, you know, we go left when everyone goes right. And I think that's kind of proven time and again, you know, probably our best path. And
They said
I
you're
can hear you.
rugging a little bit. Can you hear
Am
me at
I
least?
no good?
They said you're lagging a bit on your end.
Are we good?
I heard you now. Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you. I hear it.
All right, cool.
Yo, sorry. I'm just hopping,
It's
shitty and
all it's all good. Are you like in a tunnel or something?
no, it's
It looks
I'm in
beautiful.
LA today.
It looks nice.
Yeah,
Are we better, chat?
I don't know
Before
if this
we
is better. Hopefully, yes.
No, I can hear you. I just want to make sure on their end. Okay, they said it's a bit better.
O-
All right, cool,
Okay,
cool. So
okay.
yeah, I'll repeat the question
Well,
just
let me know
so.
if let me know if it's yeah. Let me know if it's not. Again, this is the downside of just being chronically on the road. You're held hostage
Whatever
to
they got.
whatever shitty hotel, cafe, internet.
Okay, so they're
Yeah.
all saying it's much better. All right, so we're gonna start from the top again, right? So I was saying you guys tried something new,
Okay.
something different, something that hasn't been done before in crypto. You guys took a massive risk on a completely new direction, but with insane risk comes even more insane reward. How fucking good does it feel to be right?
I don't. We're not right yet, right? We're
Exactly.
directionally I think when you look at the team, right? The core team, he's like Luca, like that. This entire massive core team, we're playing the long game, right? It's like the 5, the 10. It's when you think about when Amazon IPO'd, right? In that S1, it was like a bookstore, right? But in there, it was the everything store. There was this very specific vision that didn't feel that people would really get, at that moment. But then it was obvious. It was obviously blatantly obvious in hindsight. I think all of us are playing this long game of 5 to 10 years to where I think you're seeing a lot of glimpses of what abstract can be. It's this digital Disneyland of fun. But I think in order to really, I think lead the the build out of the consumer crypto movement, um, that's gonna that's gonna all play out through this decade. So again, it feels good that I think we're directionally right. When we went left, where everyone goes right, you know, you see these like small milestones, week in, week out, month in, month out, where it's like, yeah, there's just like points of validation, and a lot of that is like, you're looking at metrics like, users. Like there's 3 million, a little over 3 million wallets, 900,000 active users. The 30-day retention rate is 59%. Like coming from Activision Blizzard, the Call of Duty was at about 20% retention
Wow.
rate. Like things like TikTok are 6 to 7% retention rate on the 30-day. Like you look at Solana and Base, they're like 2 to 3 on the 30-day. So like being at 59%, like we're crushing it. And then you're looking at where the users are coming from, right? They're coming from North America, Western Europe, North Asia, like China, Korea, Japan. It's all the high GDP markets, right? So very much, we're being more like Apple than we are Android, right? I'd rather have, kind of like Roblox, I'd rather have 100 million, Gen A, Gen Z users with discretionary spending power than having a billion, just users, kind of across like different socioeconomic demographics. So like all those numbers are rolling in, and yeah, it feels not that it doesn't feel good. You feel validated. Okay, at this, the July checkpoint, we're
Exactly.
doing good, right? But that still means like we got to continue to
Of
grind and
course.
continue to hustle to make sure that August looks good, September looks good, so there's really no, I think getting
Of course.
complacent. I think that's what I love about not only the core team, but you're seeing that with the builders, right? That are building these like super fun apps. You're seeing that with the creators like yourself and others. You're seeing that with like, that 10% of this user base, the super users that are constantly just coming in and really building out the community, kind of ensuring that the culture is what it is. um, yeah, it's like all that stuff. You just have to like constantly like just keep your foot on the
100%. It's
pedal.
really good to feel that validation. That's kind of what I meant. It's like obviously no one wants to stop grinding. No one wants to put the brake where we're all gas, no brakes, if anything. But before we get into more of the abstract stuff, I wanted to get into your background. I know you got a little crazy background in crypto. I want people to understand where you come from. I know you were an early seed investor in Ethereum. You were involved in ETH 2.0, and you worked on ZK Sync, which was one of the most important L2s. Could you break that down real quick and give a people a
Yeah.
sense of how deep your Web3 roots go?
Yeah. Yeah, happy to get into it, but I also do want to put a disclaimer. I don't also like talking about, my particular like just bio, because what you see, especially what I hated about Web 2 was, yeah, you had all these like, tech companies just really just like, especially like as the internet kind of built out and mobile and whatnot, like, you know, everything just really revolved around cult of personality, right? Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, Zuck. And it was very much like, it was less about like the platform, the product, the community, like, with anything social, like that's built on the backs of creators, right? But yet like the founder or the founding team gets all of the credit. And when I transitioned over to Web3, again, like for a lot of us like crypto geezers, we kind of came in through Bitcoin through like all the cypherpunks coming out of San Francisco, as well as like all the degenerates like that were on Silk Road. And the thing that I think Web3 really got right was really just on the backs of Satoshi, right? You literally had the most goated founder, right, within our industry, just completely anonymous, right?
Yep.
And then when you ended up with Ethereum, Ethereum felt like Wu-Tang. Yeah, like there's Vitalik, but there's like 15 other co-founders of Ethereum, from like, Joe Lubin to Gav Wood to like, this whole host of characters. And I think at some point Web3 kind of lost its way a bit, where it's like all of these like alt L1s, these L2s, it really became it started to like, cult of personality started to form, right? Where, you had, we're not gonna put people on blast, but like there's certain founders that are doing like some shitty version of like a weekly talk radio show, right? Like kind of pretending like they're Joe Rogan or something. And then others are just out there kind of doing like, the conference circuit, and it's really more about them than the community. And I think the thing that I think hopefully people appreciate about Abstract is that, you know, the core team, it feels hopefully like, you know, we're we're kind of like in the trenches with everybody that's building apps, that, the content creators that are, obviously, creating all this banger content, as well as, we're getting constant feedback from the super users that are using, the platform, like the three-sided platform. So hopefully people take away that, you know, there isn't, Abstract, will kind of just continue to send on the backs of the community, the ecosystem, versus like the kind of the core founding team, the core team. So just wanted to put that out there. And so it's less about like, oh, like kind of Michael has a certain background, Luca has a certain background, or Lorenzo and Saigar and this whole crew. So I think it's always, yeah, it's always like disconnect these things. Hopefully I'm, treated like, just like one of all of you, trying to build out the consumer crypto movement. But to your question, like, yeah, like just kind of started off, at least from crypto early days, when I moved to San Francisco, got some of the earliest folks that I met were like the cypherpunks, the folks in the small talk community. These were the, kind of the privacy preserving, uh, you know, folks. And then there's also like out of San Francisco, you had all the folks that were using Silk Road. It was like 2012, 2013. And to be honest, like those early Bitcoin meetups in Palo Alto, where you had like Hal Finney and, all these like, like Adam Black would kind of, roll through. To be honest, it was like half of the conversation was always like, kind of making sure that the internet remains open and free. And the only way to really do that is, through crypto. And then there's another group of folks who were just trying to have fun. Obviously Silk Road was fun, but it was also straight up illegal. But it was kind of fun. Like you just saw a lot of experimentation.
For sure.
And then when Ethereum rolled around, I was working on Kubernetes. It was like kind of like super nerdy technology incubated by Google, raised a bunch of money, and then we took that commercial, like similar to like what you saw with like maybe the commercialization of like Linux, same playbook, and then we got that to $1 billion in annual recurring revenue within 26 months of product and market. But at nights and weekends, I had a bunch of friends that I grew up playing World of Warcraft with, like these like Chinese kids that came to New York. They're all from like well-to-do families, but they were going to like private school in New York, and I just ended up meeting them just because we were in the we were playing World of Warcraft together, and they eventually went back to China for university, and they were the earliest Bitcoin miners, and they had a Bitcoin meetup in Beijing, because they were all going to either like Beijing or Peking University, and then they all got normie jobs, and then they moved to Shanghai, and they brought their hobby, the Bitcoin meetup with them. And I think that's where Vitalik first caught a look, where when Ethereum launched, nobody really gave a shit in North America, Western Europe, but the Chinese guys, because they all had like computer science backgrounds, they understood what that was, and the potential. And that's how I got pulled into not only the Ethereum seed round, but there was a whole like community built around like ETH 2.0. That was like way back in the day when that was the only way to make Ethereum go fast. And there are people that were building different portions of trying to improve Ethereum. And then there was also a bunch of us trying to kind of bootstrap consumer crypto. How do we bring all these global brands to Ethereum? And it was just probably back in like what, 2015, late 2015, 2016. It was like straight up way too early. The infrastructure wasn't ready for prime time. But then like from there, just worked on a lot of other crypto projects. Because you saw everyone spin out of Ethereum, to create Cosmos and Polkadot and Definity and Filecoin. And then you kind of had that next tranche of Alt L1s, with Solana and now Sui, Aptos, AVAX. And I think just over time, you just saw all of just a lot of smart people just really iterating on just making like hardening the technology. And I think whenever you see these shifts in computing, it always takes 8 to 12 years, right? For these shifts to really like cement itself, right? And again, like I'm a complete moron, in trying to predict the future, but the way that I look at like where things are going is just
Exactly.
based off the past, right? So when every 8 to 12 years,
Mhm.
you see the shift in computing from mainframes to client server, where people like had their own like on-prem data centers, to the cloud, to mobile, to containers. And containers, we took that public 2018. So it's been a minute, right? We really started working on that in 2014, 2015. So it's like it's been a minute to where it's like you're going to see this next shift in computing. And there's only three options. It's either blockchain, AI.
Yeah.
It's too early for quantum because there's smarter people than me that tell me that, that's, it's we're like 25 years out. AI, depending on who you ask, it could be a computing platform. It could be at the app layer, a productivity tool. And then, a lot of shit smart people have been working on blockchain, probably since Ethereum launched July of 2015. So, that's going to probably be the next big computing paradigm, which doesn't mean that it doesn't make other workloads on previous computing environments extinct. Shit still runs on mainframe. IBM is still selling a shit ton of mainframes, right? You'll still have things
Well,
running on AWS, Google Cloud, right? But it's just yet another computing paradigm that unlocks like new parts of the internet because it unlocks new types of apps, right? So I think this is where, now that we're 10 years from like uh, from Ethereum launching, this is where it just was obvious to create abstract. And when you look at abstract, the chain itself is an absolute commodity, right? Like there's like 500 chains out there, right? So like whether it's Ethereum, Solana, abstract, base, you're just making trade-offs, right? Across throughput slash speed, decentralization, and security. One is not better than the other. It really depends what you want to build. And so I think the thing that we thought about was, if you want to do consumer, you got to do three things really, really well. Curation, right? When we're all coming onto the internet, you're going to a curated marketplace. You're going to the App Store, the Play Store. You go to Netflix for content. You're going to Amazon for curated like goods. Um, Curation, right? Nobody wants a dumpster dive for apps. And you, when there's like, I don't know, you might have like a younger sibling or like a cousin. When you introduce them to the internet, they're not going to like a website and saying like, here
mm,
are all the things to click, right? They're going to curated marketplaces. Once you go into a curated marketplace, the second thing to get right is discoverability, right? So it's like, when I'm coming onto the Apple App Store, at least, when that shit first launched, like in like what, '08, like I'm playing like, Clash, and it's going to serve me like other games. It's not going to serve me like a workplace productivity tool, and the same, and vice versa, right? If you're kind of downloading a bunch of apps, you know, for work, they're not going to serve you, Candy Crush. So I think discoverability is kind of the second key thing, and the last thing is distribution, right? When you actually have these games or these like these apps that are running on in your ecosystem, how do you make sure that they get from 0 to 1? How do you help them find the first
sure.
50, 100,000 users, and then hopefully then it's their job to retain them, and then for them to go from, we can get you to from 0 to 1. It's your job to go from a 1 to 100, and then we'll meet you on the other end to help you go from 100 to 1,000, because we'll have all these rails set up,
I want to get
right?
there, but first I want to get
But
there. But
yeah, it's
first, like I was
I think
asking you, so I love that you like want to build off the community and don't want to just build off, you guys as a team. More or less, I was trying to get into that, and I'm asking you also about your gaming background with Activision and Blizzard, just so people can understand that, like, every community needs its leaders, and it's nice to know where those leaders come
yeah.
from. And so I was going to ask you, Ness, what games were you part of building out on Activision and Blizzard? And how has that experience helped you get here to Abstract?
um, Yeah, I was at Activision Blizzard for 5 game launches. Overwatch 2, the reprise of Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty. Also did
Wow.
Warzone 2. Uh, did an expansion of World of Warcraft, Dragonflight. And then the last game I helped launch was Diablo
Okay,
4.
so that's yeah.
And I think all of those absolutely crushed it,
They
whether it
did.
was in terms of revenue, like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2 made like $1 billion within its first 28 days. Uh, Things like Overwatch 2 that was more free to play, that hit like 35 million users in its opening weekend. I think Diablo 4 absolutely cooked. We probably hit $1 billion within its first 6 days. And that was really off of 6 markets, right? Where we're targeting female gamers from, players from 15 to 25. And again, like, I think with each of these things, it shows different things, right? I think one, you know, for these like, viral apps, games, from Web 2, the the numbers are just astronomical, right? When you can launch, an Overwatch 2 to 35 million people opening weekend, or Warzone 2, I think did 25 million in its opening weekend. Like that's where we're trying to aspire to, right? For a lot of these like Web 3, not just games, but
Exactly.
just apps. And at the same time, like you're kind of seeing this revenue meta start to creep in on the timeline. And again, like, the economics in Web 2, if you get it right, is just astronomical, right? The fact that you can make $1 billion in 6 days off of, focus on 6 markets. Again, a lot of that is just really, building something that people just want to use, and just, going to market the right way, and hopefully you have product market fit. So there's a lot of discipline from Web 2. And I think as you see more of these folks, with like a strong Web 2 background that are crypto native, or just at least can easily understand it, I think you're seeing that group of folks coming to Abstract and building, but you're also seeing this pipeline of a lot of the pipeline of folks that we have. Yeah, I think there are just kind of crypto native, kids who just grow up just on crypto rails. Like we see a lot of that on
Sure.
Abstract, but a lot of the folks that we're bringing, that we have, builders that we have in the pipeline, they're crypto curious people with like a pretty notable, like extensive, like Web 2 background. And again, like what they lack in understanding crypto and crypto
That's where you
culture,
come in.
as far as like how to build a great product, great app, how to take it to market. Yeah, and it's like, again, like even like, you look at like folks like Luca, Lorenzo, like that
Getting
whole like
hit.
core Pudgy team.
Yes.
Those guys, as young as they are, absolutely crushed it in Web 2, well
Geniuses, 100%.
before they came into crypto. Like, yeah, it's like Luca took, gel blasters from 0 to $500 million in revenue, got into Walmart and Target, and was like head to head with Nerf, well before he, came into Pudgy. Like Lorenzo had, you know he had a, pretty notable, dev shop out of Silicon Valley, that was doing like, close to $100 million annually, a year in revenue. And then Saigar, people don't know, but he came up through Facebook, Uber, Robinhood. Again, like all these guys
Masterminds.
know how to operate at scale. They've seen scale. They've seen product market fit. And what makes them all ridiculously successful now in crypto is that
And
they're
bringing them
taking a lot of
here.
those learnings,
Exactly.
and business is
100%.
business, right? Yeah, whether it's like you're analog before the internet, or after the
It's all the
internet, or
same.
you go from desktop to mobile. The way to go to Yeah, the way to build great product, take it to market, right? Scale it. It's all the
Exactly.
same playbook. It just comes in a very just different context, different form factor. So I think it's a lot of that experience coming from gaming, super transferable. A lot of it's also just kind of coaching a lot of the folks that are building. Like, I think the interesting thing about Abstract is anyone can deploy to the chain, but to
Mhm.
be able to be in the consumer terminal, you have to meet a certain standard.
And we'll get there. I
And we
love
probably
that.
cut about 70% of the inbound that we get off the jump.
100%.
But a lot of those folks that are in the pipeline will help them at, like almost like an incubator, right? To where we're sharing a lot of the knowledge that we've acquired over the years, whether it's from our Web 2 days, or Pudgy, or coming from ZK Sync, or early days of Ethereum. So I think that's also like, I think the value that building an Abstract gives a lot of these builders. It's like they have access to Luca, Saigar, and everybody in between.
And that's where I'd like, I'm trying to push too, because I want people to understand this stuff, right? I want people to know, like you said, it's not just about the team, but it's important to know, a lot of people are in abstract, they probably don't know who you are and your background and sidebars and Lucas, but I want there to be that understanding of like, hey, these people have built these very great things on Web 2, and it can all be brought into Web 3, and I definitely will be getting into that. Now let's get into the actual juicy stuff, like abstract, consumer crypto, frictionless onboarding, this new era that I have been talking about, that I believe we're stepping into. First, I'd like to start off with, how did you and Luca first connect on abstract? Like, where did this idea come from, and how did it become real between the two of you and the rest of the team?
I had met Luca, Lorenzo, and team a couple years ago. I was actually at Active. I was taking a break from crypto. I think after like the last cycle of helping a lot of the alt L1s get to market, I went to ABC television for a minute, working with the John Wick team on a crime drama, and then Activision Blizzard to launch 5 games. And when I was at Activision, um, Luca and team were building out Pudgy World, and they just had a lot of questions, and again, just helping them on the free because I wanted to see these guys win. Um, Even back then, I could just tell that Pudgy was going to be the face. Penguins were going to be the face of it's going to be not only the face of like the mascot for Web 3, but it was one of these like friendly ways to kind of get Web 2 brands into our industry. And you're seeing this right with Walmart and Target,
Every,
even Van Eck and Nasdaq, kind of flexing penguins. Like it just
everybody.
these guys just understood how to kind of bridge Web 2 and Web 3. And again, I was just doing my part is in just making sure that those guys won. So just kind of helping them with game development, game loops, just sharing whatever little knowledge I had around gaming. And then when I after I launched Diablo 4, I ended up going into ZK Sync to really help them scale and uh, get to TGE. We had brought on the government of Argentina to essentially build all of their digital ID solutions on ZK Rails, and then we also brought on uh, Pudgy World, and that's where I got to again continue to work with Luca, Lorenzo, Chef, the Don, and that whole team. And then I think it was probably ETH Denver, February of 24, where I think Luca was thinking like, okay, like in order for Pudgy World to really smash it, like they need a consumer terminal. Again, something that has curation, that has discoverability, that has distribution. Nobody really had that. So I think Luca, Lorenzo, and team are really forced to try to figure out how do we have to build a chain? Do we have to build this like app store? Like nobody's building it, so they kind of have to like do it themselves and start to verticalize. And at the same time, I was also out here in LA working with a couple of the big Hollywood agencies and sports. It was actually a UTA and LeBron James's Clutch Sports, and figuring out how do we build a chain and also like similar app store for a lot of these folks out here in sports and entertainment to you know to do the same thing, to build this curated marketplace, those discoverability that has distribution. And I think this is where I think Luca and I were just chopping it up, and it's like, yo, like if we were both successful at some point, we're going to kind of meet in the middle. Might as well just join forces. So this is probably what, March of 24. Luca, Lorenzo, and I had founded Abstract. And then again, you got to know where your weaknesses are, and it's been a while since both Lorenzo and I coded shit up. So it's like you got to go after the best, and the best out there was Saigar,
Cyber.
Stinky Pablo, Beans, that were working on Frame, and that was like an aqua hire where they kind of came in for core engineering. And to their credit, man, it's like, you know, probably in that same year. Like we started Abstract March of 24. You know, by July 20th or June 20th, we had a testnet up and running. And then by I think July 27th, we came out of stealth mode, where it was a public testnet for builders, infrastructure providers to start messing around with the network, and then kind of speed ran this to where by January 27th of this year, you have mainnet launch. So, and again, like we've only been alive for what, like 172 days,
Insane.
and just the numbers are just like hockey sticking up, right? Where it's like 3
Insane.
million wallets, 900,000 active users,
Insane.
59% 30-day retention rate, $200 million of organic TVL, where all of that,
We're getting
the
into.
velocity of money is like ridiculously high. And I think this just goes to show, like, you have like, a core team that has like that kind of Mamba mindset. They'll crush it.
So yeah, 100%. That's funny you mentioned TVL, because that's exactly what we're getting into next. So here on Abstract, we sell the idea of consumer crypto, the Disneyland of the crypto store apps. But instead of going the usual route and like farming TVL, chasing
Sorry, I
the
missed that
degens,
last one just because my internet is
you're
just
good.
spotty.
You're good. 100%. So here on Abstract, we're selling the idea of consumer crypto, the Disney of crypto app stores, right? But instead of going the usual route and farming TVL, chasing degens, you and Luca made the call to go organic. You focused on finding the right communities, the right games, the right dApps to fit the story, and you built it from the ground up, right? Instead of just buying this stuff. That's not normal in crypto. And as a person who was here from the day one, it wasn't safe. We got a lot of shit for it. So what made you guys take that path, and why was the risk worth taking, in your opinion?
And it's not just us, right?
You
Luca,
rugged for
myself,
maybe like, I'm sorry, you rugged for maybe like a
Lorenzo
good
or
minute.
Saigar. It's the whole core team, right? Everyone has, I think they're all locked in,
No one,
with the same philosophy where we go left when everyone goes right.
you rugged
Uh,
for nobody. I don't think anybody
are we
heard.
good?
Yeah, nobody
Or
heard the
not so good?
answer.
Or mais ou menos? Yeah. Uh,
Okay, matter.
yeah,
Okay, cool.
my bad.
So
But okay, sorry. I think
really good, really.
there's like rolling blackouts out here.
They're all enjoying it. Everyone's having a good time. It's all good.
Yeah, it's I think LA is very much a third world country.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a
like
that's a
a.
that's a takeaway from the spot. No, I think to your question, I think it's just what I think it's like, kind of like cultural to Abstract, right? Not just, at the core team level, but the creators, the builders, the super users, is that we go left when everyone goes right, right? Like we could have, there's literally a playbook for building chain. You cut these like, TVL deals with liquid funds where, they park, 100 million in,
Yeah,
in ETH, and they get like 30 to 50% APY on some future airdrop. And then eventually you launch a token,
and they
low
built
float,
it.
high FTV, and then you just rug retail because everybody just, dumps on retail. And again, like that doesn't really help move the space forward. If anything else, it does the complete opposite, where you have TradFi looking into crypto and like, this is just this is even worse than penny stocks and like, you know, uh, pink sheets. It's like, this is like just straight up degenerate gambling in its worst form factor. So it's like, I think if we really want to make consumer crypto, a category, an extension of the current internet, right, where you're unlocking new parts of the internet, I think you just got to do it, above board. Try to do it where it's like, try to do it the right way,
Yep.
and see if it actually takes, right? It's always going to be the slower way. You're going to get a lot of FUD early days because it's not, instantaneous cook. But those same people are going to fudge you when, your token is down bad because you literally have way too many, uh, liquid hedge funds just dumping on the community, right? So I think you're
For
now
sure.
kind of seeing like, and it's like we're not even optimizing for TVL. Like you're optimizing for
Exactly.
velocity of money, right? Like I'd rather have $200 million of TVL where that a dollar
All
rotates,
the time.
5 to 7
Yes.
times within a month versus 5 billion in
Doing
TVL that just
nothing.
sits there and
Yeah.
doesn't do shit, right? It doesn't tip creators like on stream. It doesn't go out there and do in-app purchases for games. It doesn't buy collections, NFT collections. It just sits there. It's like and this is where you're kind of seeing again the real world, like economies that capitalism where it thrives, and then these like kind of like third world countries where capital is just really pooled in the hands of a few, and it doesn't really circulate through the economy where it kind of lifts up all boats. And again, like none of this stuff, like this isn't new to crypto. You literally just look at what's happening in the real world, and you're just trying to replicate that. We're literally
Yes.
creating an economy, and you're trying to look at, okay, what economy do you want? Do you want the US where it has like robust wealth creation, or do you want some piece of shit like third world, like ruled by like some dictator where every 99.9% are
Nothing.
just
Yeah.
broke as shit? No, it's like
Yeah.
it's obvious, right? but but for whatever reason, nobody really thinks about that stuff when they're building out these ecosystems. And they're just using playbooks that feels familiar. And I'm just but then again, it's like you can't use the same
No,
playbook and
you
hope for
can't.
a different result, right? If you want to be if you want to be Bitcoin, you want to be Ethereum, you want to be Solana, right? Like what each of those things have done, like now we're in our fifth cycle in crypto. There's always there's always a few winners in each of these cycles. And when you look at each of these winners, like they did things fundamentally differently from that cohort that came through, right? Like they all went left when everyone went right, right? So I think that's where this stuff isn't rocket science. Like you just look to the past and see what worked for those folks, and it was just being contrarian, and then just being
I
using
love
common
that
sense.
100%. And I agree because I feel like a lot of people complained early days, but I feel like a lot of people just didn't get it. And the people that got it stuck around, the people that didn't get left, and that's even better. So I agree with you 100%. And I wanted to get on to something else, the HW. Because to me, that feels like the straight up cheat code of all of this, right? You're telling me that I could sign up with no email, no seed phrase, no MetaMask, none of that bullshit. And now we're hearing that Apple Pay is coming, right? You add on session keys on top of that. And we're looking at an illusion that I feel like is so seamless that most people don't even understand that they're using crypto in general, right? It feels like Abstract is really just a few steps away from onboarding a bunch of people, right? Through gaming, creators via streaming, and now this easy to use wallet that solves a problem that we've been dealing with Web3 for years, right? So it's frictionless, it's fast, and it actually makes sense.
Mhm.
Was that always your guys' plan to hide all this stuff behind the scenes? And how long did it take to get the AGW to place into a place that works?
Yeah, again, like it goes back to the name. We named it Abstract, and the whole point of naming, you know, uh, the platform Abstract was you're abstracting away all the crypto nonsense and bullshit. Like and again, this is where mobile gaming just absolutely took off, right? When the App Store came out, the Apple App Store, you know, you had this business model where it was free to play. Just download a game, try it out. If you like it, people stick with it. And then there's a group of people who play for free, and then there's a small number of people, like in any game, whether it's Clash, Candy Crush, Honor of Kings, where they'll pay to skip levels, skins, and all this other fun stuff. And I think the rise of mobile games was just they just made it easy for people to onboard and try, right? And I think you're literally taking that same approach, right? So when you look at our stats, there's like a couple of ways to onboard. I think most kind of crypto curious normies will essentially use some form of social login, right? Email, Google account, passkey, which is just Face ID, Touch ID. That's like 82% of the people that are coming on board, right? It's probably 99% of all of the, kind of the F1 Red Bull Racing fans that are coming onto Abstract. They're all coming through, social login via AGW. And there's like a small percentage that are kind of logging in with an existing wallet like a MetaMask. And again, like you have to give those, I grew up on that, and I'll probably never get off of
Same.
MetaMask when not on Abstract. And that's fine. You got to give people a path to eventually like come into Abstract, explore, and over time. right? Just like no one has a rotary telephone in their house, a landline. Like eventually that's, people will transition because, all the fun stuff, all the, collecting, getting XP, collecting badges, additional things, just around building out your consumer profile, your player profile. It just becomes easier on AGW. So yeah, I think it's, again, it goes back to the core of, we named it abstract because we're abstracting away all the crypto nonsense for users, for creators, for builders. So I think that's always just been kind of the North Star, is like, how do you create a technology to where it's just within
Fun,
3 seconds, you're just in the
fun.
digital Disneyland of fun, and then you're just exploring. So that's not a surprise. Probably a surprise was the retention rate. The 30 right now we're at 59%. So, 30 days after someone onboards via, coming into abstract, there 59% are still there at the end of 30 days. And when you look at, I don't know, other consumer, you know, viral consumer apps like Call of Duty was like around like 20-25% on the 30 day, and that's generally high. Like most AAA games are probably 5 to 10%. TikTok is 6 to 7% 30-day retention. Disney Plus, Netflix, 9 to 11. And then you look at Solana and Base again, like those are slightly like older networks, but they're like 2 to 3% on the 30-day retention. Um, so us sitting at 59%, like that means that we did shit right, right? We were able to easily onboard people in 3 seconds using email, Google account, passkey. And then once you're in, there's a universe of things to just, go explore, right? Whether it's like this constant launching of fun apps, and then there's streaming. Again, like streaming is like, it's almost like a retention mechanism. Like, there isn't a banger app that's coming out every day. So it's like, okay, what else can I do? And what you notice is like people are coming to abstract in their breaks.
So,
We're not competing with primetime television, like, for sports, or, we're not competing with other entertainment, whether it's like AAA games or movies and, TV shows. People are coming on for like on average, like, anywhere from like 9 to about 20 minutes during their break time, right? Where they just come in, they're just like having fun. They're flipping coins, they're buying NFTs, they're playing games, they're watching streams, they're making friends, they're collecting badges, like, and that's when you're in that spot where you're essentially just, people are coming to digital Disneyland, in the 10 to 20 minute break time that they have throughout the course of a day. What are you competing with? Not much, right? It's people procrastinating. And I think this is why you see this hockey stick of adoption. Because, again, this is where mobile gaming did really, really well, right? Like I grew up you know, on console with Call of Duty and desktop with World of Warcraft. And I faded mobile games. I thought that was absolute horseshit. But then like people, people like my wife didn't grow up on console or desktop, but she's out there like
Candy
slicing
Crush, I
food,
knew
crushing
it.
candy when that shit first came out. And where was she? Yeah, where is she playing? And like, the 2.8 billion mobile gamers, they're playing it, in their commute, right? So when you're on the bus, you're on the train, right? You're in an Uber. What are you competing against if you're a mobile game? You're competing against someone checking email, like, scrolling through the news, reading a book. Like playing a game is way more fun in that 5 minute break that you have, or maybe a 20-minute commute. Same like in these break times throughout their day, where it's like what we're really competing against is, some other ways for people to procrastinate. And I think that's where we'll continue to double down and, make sure that we provide people value and utility, when people do want to just like chill out for a minute.
And I think that's awesome because it goes like
But I
into
think going back to, kind of the masterminds of, abstract global wallet, credit goes I would say credit goes to Saigar Coffee and like just the entire, engineering product, creative team. It's like a small number of people that are just absolutely talented that just crush that. And again, what you're seeing with Apple Pay, Google Pay coming out, fiat on ramps to where you're connecting your actual normie bank account to AGW. Like you'll start seeing more and more of these features. Maybe a credit card. It's like where it's literally just acting like a neobank. And I think a lot of that is really like the brainchild of, this core group that's just, again, they're super users themselves. They're like, what do we want in AGW that we would use? So everyone's dog fooding this. And again, like there's a couple of us that are out there, going out and, creating these partnerships to make sure that we bring Apple Pay, Google Pay, or like, Visa into AGW. But, I think a lot of this is, really masterminded by, the kind of like the core engineering product design team. So I think, credit to those guys.
100%. And one thing that ties to HW and why it works so well is because we have the portal, right? And that's one thing that continues to impress me personally. Like, so it's something I'm vocal about in abstract, how safe and clean the portal feels, right? Because not only do we have now this wallet that's seamlessly easy to onboard people, we also have the portal where it feels comfortable. Like I could tell my family, I could tell my friends, I could tell my neighbor, my barber, I just onboarded him last week. And I could tell him like, hey, like, you have your HW now, and now we have the portal as well, where you don't have to worry about getting scammed, clicking a shady link, or getting their wallet drained, which is something that is it happens a lot in Web3. So that's something I really liked. Everything is audited, curated, and up to a standard. I would like to know, like, how important was that when you guys were building Abstract? And for the people listening, right, how does that process look behind the scenes to actually get your app onto the portal?
Yeah, I think when you go after these net new markets, it's either you go after the existing crypto market, right, which is probably like 5,000 degens wash trading coins, which is, again, like a lot of us kind of came up through those ranks. Or you're going after, the billion, not even a billion. It's like, to be honest, it's like 50 to 100 million. It's like Roblox, right? Like Roblox has about like 98 million active users. And that's a platform that every global brand wants to, build on, right? It's worth over 75 billion because what they have is a vice grip on, a younger generation like Gen Z and millennials in that platform. Um, and so for us, it was like super obvious. Like we want to go after, like that Roblox group, like that crowd, right? We're like the next iteration of it, where if Roblox focuses on millennials and older, Zoomers, we're focusing on older, Gen Alpha and younger Gen Z, where they all grew up crypto native, right? Just like there's like the generation before that grew up mobile native. Um, and we're just catering to that group of people, which is like anywhere from like 50 to 100 million, 10 high GDP markets that really matter for consumer. Um, and I think when you're targeting that crowd, right, it can't be a free for all, right? A handful of bad experiences, you're just
On.
that retention rate is going to go to zero, right?
Exactly.
So if you're going to do that, then it's like, okay, like we could have literally brought on, you know, I don't know, things that are like not safe for work. People are just constantly coming to us, like, like probably some of the bigger workloads out there on the internet. You know, where we would have just printed money by servicing, those workloads. But again, like we're thinking like, okay, like in order to bring the 50 to 100 million users that really matter, you got to build a kind of a crypto version of, uh, crypto Disneyland. And in order to do that, you got to focus on just, kind of these fun apps. And I think Luca did a phenomenal job in really like laying out, like, in this first phase of consumer crypto, it's things around gaming, creator platforms, trading, legal casinos and betting, digital collectibles, tokenized culture. And I think with those 7 use cases, like we're going specifically after that stuff. Like there's there's been like really like well-to-do like venture-backed teams that are doing like a really interesting like HR SaaS product on crypto rails. It's like as interesting as that is, like that's not really for us, right? Like that's not part of like you're not going to Disneyland and no one's gonna you don't want to be pitched Salesforce, right? Um, not that there's anything wrong with Salesforce, but it's not the right venue to sell a CRM system. So it's the same thing for us. It's like we focus on these 7 kind of fun use cases, and then once you do that, you vet the shit out of it. right? You want to make sure that the team is legit. It's a quality team, knows how to build good product, is has that dog in them to continue to iterate. And then at the same time, you want to make sure that their app is fully audited, because you could have a good team, but they could be sloppy. So again, none of this is like bulletproof, but we're taking these extraordinary measures to make sure that when you bring on your barber, right, like he has a super dope experience, and then he's going to tell another five friends, right, and those people will tell another five friends, and again, this is how like we end up with this hockey stick of users coming on to Abstract, and then amongst those users, a large clip of them are active users, right?
Exactly.
It's not just people who just have like an account, and they're kind of periodically in and out. It's people who are just constantly coming back, on the daily, every week. So that's where you want to get to, and that kind of active activity is what makes the velocity of money go ridiculously fast.
So what does that process to get on the portal look like?
Yeah, so I think there either if you don't know anyone in the core team, there's an application, and we're just constantly checking that daily. But as people kind of come in, um, again, the value of the App Store is that, it's curation. So the moment that, people kind of come in, like your barber comes in, there's got to be a 1 in 3 chance that he discovers something fun,
He
that he has
likes.
an anchor app, right? Once you have an anchor app, now we can do discoverability. We can introduce you to other like apps, right? Or they could discover it themselves. Um, and so what you can't do is you can't, as much as I want to like bring in all of these, like there's like thousands of people who want to deploy apps. It's so much like the Apple App Store. There's got to be some minimal, some standard, right? Uh, Not even just minimum standards, like a standard of excellence to where he's not dumpster diving for apps. The moment that he starts to dumpster dive and he clicks on 5 different things, doesn't find anything interesting, he'll churn out and never come back to crypto, right? So again, don't love turning down 70% of the people that are interested. But again, it's like we don't think that what you're building is going to have mass appeal. And when you look at these projects, you subjectively look at it through 3 different lenses. Like it has to hit one of these 3 things. It either has to be able to generate like up to about 1 million in revenue once it kind of finds goes from 0 to 1, kind of finds early product market fit. And the reason that, what revenue is interesting is it just means that, you've built something to where it is valuable to where your user base wants to pay, right? To like, whether it's in-app purchases or it's some type of like membership or something, but it's like they find value enough. Like I'm putting in $10 and I know I'm going to get more than $10 in utility back from this exchange. So it's like, you know, million in revenue, so you can be a sustainable app. If it's a freemium model, if you get to product market fit, or kind of find that early like user base, do you have this trajectory to get to 1 million MAUs eventually? Because what you've built, you really just people just want to share with 10 other people, right? Kind of bring their friends and family on board. So like you're looking for either revenue or 1 million in revenue or 1 million in monthly active users. And the last category of apps is you might not really have a great revenue model. You're never going to really make anywhere close to $1 million in revenue, and you're not really built to scale to 1 million users, but you're culturally relevant, right?
Hmm.
And this is kind of like for all of us that kind of came up through like hip hop or streetwear. It's like streetwear, like, especially streetwear. It's like you know things like Off White. They weren't really meant to get as big as as far as like move as like much merch as like as like Zara or H&M or Nike, right? And they're not supposed to, but they kind of influence, move, and shape culture because of what they represent. And so you're looking for a lot of those projects as well. So if these kind of projects that are interested in abstract, deploying on the App Store meets one of these 3 criteria, you kind of make it to the next phase, right? Where you have the core team almost acting like kind of like Y Combinator, right? To really kind of slot you in based on like what your launch schedule is, and they'll help you through different phases, right? Whether it's like people like, you know, Mason and Raj, who are, you know, really just almost like operating like a COO in residence to really kind of help you kind of make some adjustments to where you might see Stinky Pablo to, you know, really help you around like, you know, making some tweaks around your product, or you see Chef, you know, doing the same thing around product and design. And then, you know, you'll see Saigar, Coffee, Curtis, like, you know, like the whole goated engineering crew with, you know, DevRail on, you know, with Jared and Avril, really like helping you, making sure that you integrate AGW correctly. You know, if I wanted, if it's a game, I want to bring in the Unity, you know, SDK, how do I do that? You know, they'll kind of help you through that phase of it too. And then eventually you'll see, you know, Finn, Logan, Luca, Vedant, like on the go-to-market side, it's like, how do we launch you properly to where we're a publisher and we can send you 50,000, 100,000 users. So you can just hopefully have the best chance of going from 0 to 1, and then hopefully you keep retain a lot of those users that we send you.
Mhm. Yeah, so 100%. And I feel like something that helps a lot with that is XP. I always look at XP as like the golden signal, the heartbeat of Abstract, really. I feel like how much value it gives back, not just to the users, but to the team. You know, we get it weekly, but you guys as a team, I feel like it's a way to identify real product fit in the ecosystem. If your DApp makes it through the process of, you know, getting on the portal, using the AGW, it's strong, it's tested, it's audited. You now get the chance to drop something, as you just said yourself, in front of hundreds of thousands of people. And then you get real feedback, real users, and real volumes. And if the product hits, those products reap the rewards. So not only are we able to do that, and then you guys are also able to take those data metrics to brands like Red Bull, the K-pop label, and one of these brands that you guys keep teasing that we'd love to know. How successful has this loop back been for you guys, this feedback loop? And how did you guys even come up with the system? Because now we're seeing things like OpenSea and other brands try to use it.
Yeah, no, again, none of this is new, right? We'd love to take credit for creating something, you know, innovative, but this is stuff that has worked, you know, for forever in Web 2, right? I think one, when you think about Abstract, right? If it is a marketplace, what it is a publisher, right? It's like Steam. It's like like why did Activision Blizzard, you know, sell to Microsoft for 70 billion bucks? Because it's a publisher. And like, yeah, it has goated IP, right? From Call of Duty to World of Warcraft to Diablo, but they also had 650 million active users, right? You know, why does every desktop game deploy to Steam, right? Again, that's where it's a publisher. It helps you go from 0 to 1 super quick, right? To be able to find an audience. And that's what Abstract is, right? Yeah, the blockchain, there's a blockchain, which is a commodity. Um, it's optimized to, you know, obviously be hella fast. You know, gas fees are super cheap, and the ZK technology, you know, kind of brings privacy, features to it. But ultimately, like it's a publisher. We're trying to help apps get from 0 to 1 super quick, help you find audience. The way that we do that, you know, is through XP, these badges, allowing people to build up their kind of their player profile. And when you look at it, like the original concept of our XP system, I think it's kind of gotten ruined a little bit. Maybe early in the cycle, where it's like you had that whole meta of like, you know, points to airdrop, and then like 99.9% of the users fall off after TGE. But the way that we're doing it is really just inspired by AAA gaming, right? Of those XP systems have been around. I think the first XP system was in '04 with World of Warcraft, where I think the thing that made the WoW XP system fundamentally different is it tied player progress not only to like, you know, combat, but also quest completion, exploration, social interactions, right? And that just fundamentally just again, you know, again, World of Warcraft was just like an absolutely amazing experience, but like that, the XP system within there really like supercharged, you know, the engagement. And then just a few years later, Call of Duty came out in '07, I think this was with Modern Warfare, where they introduced an XP system to, kind of multiplayer first person shooter where players actually earned XP to unlock new weapons, perks, and again, you'll continue to see the perk section, in AGW, right? So there's more things coming, um, and what Call of Duty did with their XP system, it added a sense of like long term progress and personalization, right? Like I'm building up my Call of Duty player profile, right? I'm ranking up, right? There's like I'm within that whole community, like I have a certain, like reputation, right? Based off of, kind of playing the game. And then I think what you're seeing now with the dynamic XP, a lot of that's really inspired by more of the recent XP systems, where, you know, I think probably like who did that? Like Cyberpunk 2077, they probably did the best, as far as like this dynamic XP system. But then you're also adding elements of skill-based XP system. It's like with Elder Scrolls or uh, I would love for this to like evolve to where you almost have a shared XP system where people create like gyms or cohorts or clans. I think Borderlands does that really, really
Yeah,
well.
plans.
But again, the XP system is dynamic in that it'll continuously to evolve, and you know there'll be different use cases for the XP. Whether you convert that, and again, a lot of this depends on how we go to market. We're trying to bring TradFi you know, into abstract. We're not just going after crypto liquidity. We're going after TradFi institutional liquidity. We're going after mainstream, liquidity. And so we'll see what we could do with it, what's allowed and not allowed. And we're really pushing the boundaries. But ideally, what I would love for XP to do is like you're able to convert it into every different form factor based on like what people want. So the crypto native folks will want to convert their XP into the abstract token, or they would want to convert it into other ecosystem
Whoa.
tokens, right? Or you would want to normies don't give a shit about token, and they would want to convert it into almost like the Amex Travel or like Chase Sapphire program where like they're going to convert it into you know travel, rewards where it's like for flights, accommodations, to things like, you know, because of our relationships, like we could get, a Super Bowl suite, World Cup tickets, like all this other stuff, to where the XP system again feels like there's something for everybody, right? Just like the way that we allow people to onboard, right? Like even like you're looking at these partnerships with like say like
Exactly.
Red Bull, it's like to be able to like go to like the paddock club, right? To go hang out in the
Exactly.
garage with Max, right? These are all things that, some people don't give a shit about,
And they want that stuff.
tokens, but they do, subscribe a higher utility to where they want
Yes.
access, they want experiences, right? And vice versa,
Don't
right?
feel like that.
There's people who just, what, like I'm a builder, I want upside in the underlying network that I'm building on. So they're like, yeah, like I'm less interested in these experiences, and I'm more interested in the underlying token. Or there are people who are like, yo, I want Myriad tokens, I want Gigaverse tokens, right? I want, these are the games that I'm playing, these use cases that I'm doing all the time. It's like, yes, I'm getting those tokens by participating in those ecosystems or those apps, but like I want to convert my XP into that too. So there's a lot of things that we could do with the XP system. We're still kind of scoping this out, and it's not just based off of what we want to do. It's if we want access to TradFi liquidity, to we want access to mainstream retail capital, not just crypto exchanges. Like they're gonna have different rules. So we're working through a lot of that stuff, to figure out what's possible, and we'll continue to push these people, saying like, hey, this is what the community wants. This is what not only crypto natives want, but these are what the kind of crypto curious normies want. And I think, at least with our experience in talking to people outside of crypto that we're trying to bring into the ecosystem, a lot of them have been super flexible, and I think just good partners in trying to like figure out like what feels right.
Yeah. So honestly, man, you made one thing clear. Like you guys are to me, and I really wanted to use this to like get my thoughts and your guys' thoughts and this whole idea out there. You guys aren't just building a blockchain. It's like a home. It's a place for everyone to be. It's like this new. That's why I said in the beginning, the next era of the internet of social platforms, in a sense, between the portal, the AGW experience, your XP system, everything you guys are doing, games, content, culture. It's obvious. It's not about just scaling the tech. It's about scaling literally trust, vibes, and opportunity for people, right? To me, it feels like you guys are creating kind of a new infrastructure, not just for applications, but for governance and for alignment. Uh, it's not top down, it's not token voting, it's what I'd like to call panoramic governance, where community, data, creativity, feedback all goes into the protocol itself. So to wrap things up, because I know you have a million things to do, I want to ask you, what do you hope people say 2, 3 years from now when they look back at this exact moment in Abstract's journey? And what's the legacy that you want to leave behind? Like, what's next on your radar that's nobody's ready for yet?
I hope that people view abstract as a way of unlocking a new part of the internet. I think with every one of these shifts, and just like think about it, like when cloud computing came, what did that do? It unlocked two things. It unlocked e-commerce with Amazon, and it unlocked social media with Facebook. When we moved to mobile computing, just because you have these phones in your pocket, wherever you go, it unlocked three things. The mobility essentially created a net new category of mobile games, right? Because now I'm like, you know, slicing fruit, crushing candy, playing Clash. The GPS created unlocked Uber, ride sharing, and then the camera that allowed for Instagram. You're instantly capturing the moment, and it pushed social media to like its next kind of iteration. When I did Kubernetes, again, super nerdy technology, but what that did was it supercharged streaming. The first people to use Kubernetes, the commercial version of it, was Netflix, Discord, Twitch. Streaming existed before we really rolled out Kubernetes, but it just made it unbelievably faster, right? Much more efficient, right? Now we get to blockchain with abstract, hopefully as there could be like a mobile version of this as well. I think Saigar, Chef and team are really cooking up some interesting things there. Like, how do we take what we see to iterate on this? It'll unlock new use cases. And then what those use cases just mean, it's like it's a new part of the internet. Like the internet's one of these things where it's like it goes into infinity, right? And every few years, just new parts of the internet just gets unlocked, right? It's like almost like playing a game. Like you're unlocking a new map, right? And that's the same shit with the internet. So I really hope that what Abstract does is just unlocks new parts of the internet, which creates value for everybody. Hopefully, unlocks a shit ton of fun for everybody, and then that's what we get to be known for. I think if we do that, and this Roblox did the same shit for that specific generation. Really unlock a new part of the internet where people can just create, UGC for like a younger audience where they wanted to be more immersive and participate in building of the game that they play all the time. Like, what's our version of that? And I think everything that we're doing points towards
Yes.
that we are going to get there. And with all these big brands, same thing. It feels like Roblox, where it's like Roblox does two things really, really well. It has a vice grip on a very specific young audience,
Yes.
which we do as well. Like our audience is slightly younger, and then every major brand wants to build on Roblox, and we have this massive pipeline right now. Like, yes, we have Red Bull Racing and but the largest independent K-pop studio, but there's a ton more. And this is why I'm on the road all the time. I'm doing workshops and just helping these global brands try to figure out, all right, like
Yeah.
how do we leverage abstract? Like they
Yes.
all have millions of ideas, and it's just like focusing them on like the one thing, making them successful, and then they unlock phase two, three, four, five. But you'll start seeing a floodgate of a lot of these global brands coming on crypto rails. And the way that we do it is like we hide everything. They love that. Just the fact that we hide everything. We're able to send them users, but then we're also clawing users like Red Bull. That those first two opening weekends, drop weekends, we brought out of Monaco, we brought
It's
240,000 net
insane.
new users into Abstract. the last one, we brought 74,000 users onto Abstract. And again, we sent them like 1.6 million users. So it's like, yes, don't mind sending our users at like a 2 to 3 to 1 clip. But again, like we're bringing people on chain. They don't
Exactly.
even know they're on chain, right? Because they literally just, like your barber, you're literally just putting your email or your Google account. 3 seconds, you're on Abstract. You're mostly doing, kind of, that specific, workload, which is like, collecting all the, Red Bull digital collectibles. But then eventually Discovery gets some of those people to try Myriad, to try Gigaverse, to try, it's just, we're constantly just rotating them into other apps slowly. And because you also want to make sure that you're playing the long game. You're not just like
Yes.
bombarding them with like, buy this coin, buy this NFT, play this game. It's like, then they churn out, right? You want to make sure you kind of slowly bring them along, and they're almost even like
Even
discovering it
better.
themselves, which is great.
100%, bro. Like, I love that we had this conversation. I love everything that you said because it's a lot of the things that like I believe, and I have my group that I built from Abstract, for about 100 members, and like I tell this to them all the time, and just for them to hear it from somebody else, it's amazing because I am so bullish on Abstract. I'm so bullish on what you guys are building. I believe that you guys are opening and unlocking, like you said, this new level of the internet and Web3 in general. Uh, it really does feel like a fresh of breath air in crypto and Web3. And we're starting to break those barriers of what Web2 and Web3 is because it's all the same stuff to me. That's all what I always say. It's just scale, like it's just a new, like you said, it's just a
It's
new part of the internet. Like it's
it's
just
just the
something new. It's all it is. It's like going from Nokia to the fucking sidekick
yeah,
to now a
then
touchscreen phone, right? Like it's just
yeah,
evolving. And we're the next evolution.
they're all yeah. I think that's where people get it. Yeah, that's where people get it wrong. You're spot on. It's like there
Proves
is no
that
Web
shit.
one, Web two, Web three, 4, or 5.
Exactly.
It's just the internet, right? And it's almost, I think this is where it's like, we're all consumers. We're all like, we're all digital natives. And what you're really just trying to help people do is probably one of two things, right? Help people have fun and
Exactly.
help people make money. All right. And if you could do those two things, right, on repeat, you have the community just absolutely skyrockets. The retention is going to be astronomical. And again, this is where we're just ruthlessly focused on those two things. And there's some people who just
Yes.
come just have fun. They don't give a shit about like building up an audience, like flipping coins, flipping NFTs to like make money. But there's also a small portion of folks that where it's like, yeah, like I want to be in an ecosystem where there's all these opportunities to kind of hunt for that 100x. And I think this is where then you get to the point where if you built all of that up, when you have to decentralize and you have to have a token, you're not going to have this 99% drop off. Because I think this is why we're super anti-farming. Because every chain that gets
They
farmed,
don't
the
care.
users disappear. But if you can create an ecosystem where people are having fun, already making money, they're going to stay well after the
It's
network gets
like I
decentralized.
100%. But like that's what I've been telling people. Like I made this video the other week. It's like everyone's complaining. I see people like not everywhere, but I see it. There's supports of people like what happens after, what happens after, and I'm like, brother, we've been on the chain for 6 months. We've built communities. We're in these discords every day. We're building friends, and we're building communities. We're building our characters online, our personalities, our brands. Like and we have another probably 6 months to go. Like, why the hell would we go back to Solana? Why would we take our money elsewhere and go anywhere else, right? Like when it's proven that the most fun, the best technology, all that we need is here, right? And if you add stuff like perks and governance and A, B, and C, everything we talked about, then no one's gonna leave. Everyone's gonna want to just hone in and double down.
I would think of it like this: like TGEs are always bearish, right? After TGE, 99.9% of the users go down. The way that we're approaching it is
Mhm.
almost like an IPO. Great IPOs, it's an accelerator, right? Like Uber IPO, right? Facebook, right? Circle, right? After an IPO, what that does is like you literally get a war chest, you shove it back into the product, into the ecosystem, and then all of a sudden now it's just 10, 100 X's. So like that's the mindset that we have, where it's like like, yeah, like TGE is bearish. Like, yes, there will be a token, but we're approaching it almost like an IPO where it's like every goated IPO, that is an accelerator to where the ecosystem just absolutely just pops off well after that. So, the way that we're building all of this is like, all right, how do we build this whole product, this whole community, this ecosystem where it's sustainable? And if we do our jobs right, you just have a war chest of capital that just comes back in to essentially just un- unlock new parts of the internet via abstract, and then just gives all of you, whether you're a builder, a creator, or a user, just like it's like you're unlocking like 50 maps at once, right? And then it's like go have
That
fun.
I feel like was an alpha leak. I don't know if anyone's heard that before. But IPO instead of the TGE, that's the first I'm hearing of it. And I see a lot of woes in the chat. So that I feel like that's a great way to end this off. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you guys are doing as a team. I know everyone in my community does. I know everyone on Abstract also does. We're having a bunch of fun. So just so you know, from our standpoint, I think you guys are doing a great job. I think everything's working out. I like the slow cooks anyway myself, so it's great to be a part of that. And it's been, like I said, a fresh breath there. So thank you, Cash. I appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait for not just the IPO, but 2, 5, 10 years down the line.
uh,
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.